was hoping somebody else would come and present, but no, it's my turn. So I'm hearing a couple of people are looking if I was going to wear any Havaianas to the presentation. Just so you know, I do wear Havaianas with a suit. But since Nespresso came up, I don't know if you've seen the new ad with George Clooney, he was wearing, I said forget it, because otherwise you're going to think I'm copying George Clooney. We'll leave that to George Clooney. But anyway, like Gabriela said, my name's Eno Polo. I do come from Kenya. I am Kenyan. I do have a Kenya passport. I am not Brazilian. But as Brazilian and multicultural, I figured maybe that's why they employed me, and that's something that wasn't said in the interview process. But, somebody told me the most expensive fake passport to buy on the market is a Brazilian passport. And the reason, because with a Brazilian passport, anyone can be Brazilian. You can be Japanese, the second biggest Japanese community outside Japan. You can be African, like where I grew up, totally black. You can be blonde with blue eyes, and the customs will think you are Brazilian, because all those people are Brazilian. So just a little bit of knowledge for the Brazilian community. But okay, so let's get to some serious talk. Alpargatas Havaianas. Some of you might be asking, what is or who is Alpargatas? Right. So just quickly, Alpargatas is the largest Brazilian footwear company in Latin America. Okay, it's a big group. It has different brands. It's a bit like VF here in Europe. So it's got brands like Havaianas, which is, I'm assuming most of you know, and if you don't, you will know by the end of this presentation. Other brands, Topper is a sports brand. If there are any major football fans in this room, if you knew the Brazilian football team of 1982 and 1986, the famous team with Socrates and Zico, that's before you guys were born, but I remember. They were sponsored by Topper. Okay, so it's a big brand, especially in Argentina. And then some other brands. Mizuno and Timberland is not a brand that belongs to Alpargatas. It's a license for the whole of South America with the Mizuno brand from Japan and Timberland, obviously. So those are. And then Osklen is a little fashion brand. It's a very niche brand in coming from basically Rio. Brazilians would probably know Osklen, that we just bought 60% of that brand. But Havaianas is the biggest brand of the group. It accounts for about 80% of the net sales. You can see how important Havaianas is in the group. Sold in 85 countries around the world. We have direct operations. This is Alpargatas in Brazil, obviously. Argentina is a very big group for the Alpargatas brand. And then since 2007 and 8, now in the US, New York office, and Madrid being the EMEA office. 14 factories belong to Alpargatas, some of them in Argentina, again for the economic situation they were produced in Argentina, and some of them in Brazil. Havaianas is produced in one factory. Okay, we just opened a second factory last year, but for the last 51 years, all of the Havaianas products were produced in one factory. So when you think a bit about cultural differences, shocked me to think what happens if the factory catches fire to the brand, right? Coming from Nike, that was a bit of a cultural shock that for 51 years you put all your eggs in one factory. But that's the way it goes, and so far proved to be a success model. Number of employees, 18,000. Obviously, with having so many factories, a lot of those are factory employees. The Havaianas factory has about 5,000 people just working in that one factory. So, enough about Alpargatas. Okay, we'll talk about, and the consolidated revenues, okay, the size of the company. Alpargatas is about $1.1 billion business. It depends on the exchange rate, but it's about $3.5 billion. Okay, so a fairly big group, and that's why it's one of the largest companies in Brazil, the largest footwear company. So Havaianas. How many of you in this room don't know Havaianas? It should be more of you, okay, because the brand awareness in Europe, well, you're probably not all European, but the brand awareness in Europe is about, I would say, 4 out of 10 people who have never heard of the brand Havaianas. So it's great because it's a big opportunity to grow our brand. But as you're all very smart people and you know a lot about marketing, I'm assuming most of you, that's why you know the brand of Havaianas. Just to give you a little bit about the brand of Havaianas. So for you, probably, for all of you, you can fall asleep for just a couple seconds as I go through this. You might know this already, but the brand Havaianas started in 1962. Very simple rubber flip-flop, okay? And then it grew as a basic commodity for the in the Brazilian market. It started as basically a poor man's footwear in the factories and in some of the lower regions. And it grew so big to become, by the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s, basically one of the staple products of of the Brazilian population. So much so that to fight inflation in the 90s, when inflation in Brazil was at a very high level, the government actually fixed the price of milk, bread, rice, and Havaianas. You laugh, but for the company, it was the worst thing they could have ever done, because they fixed the price of Havaianas, but the inflation obviously kept going up. So the salaries and everything, and the company nearly went bankrupt. It was this close to disappearing. They tried to change the logo of the brand to create another brand so they could sell and increase the prices, but obviously Havaianas was so strong that the other brand didn't even take off, and the company really looked at the end of its life. Fortunately, they got over that, and from there they started creating different products. They went away from a basic model. They started creating different models. The story is very long, but very quickly, one of the models that's the #1 selling model here in Europe. If you ask Europeans, do you know Havaianas? And they go, no. Yeah, that flip-flop with the Brazilian flag. Oh yeah, there was the Brazilian flag. But actually, that's just one model of 240 different color styles that we produce. Okay, but everybody thinks that Havaianas is one Brazil. It was actually produced for the 1998 World Cup when Brazil played against France in the final. It was supposed to be like something that Brazilians would buy to support their team. As you know, Brazil lost the final, and the company decided to stop producing it. But the consumers in Brazil loved it so much that they requested that Alpargatas basically continue. And so they did, and today it's the #1 sold product in Europe. So as you see, a lot of the time, it's not strategic thinking, it's pure luck that tell us what we should be doing. So that was good. And then from there, we started becoming a lot more fashionable. It started going from a poor man's product to basically everybody in Brazil wears Havaianas, from the rich and famous, the models, the football stars, the TV actresses. And today, you have it all the way down from the favelas to, as I said, the most famous people. And here's a statistic. We sell 10 pairs of Havaianas every second. So the longer I present to you, the more business we're going to do. Because every 10 seconds, we're selling 10 pairs. That's the volume of Havaianas we do around the world. We sell, obviously, from, like I said, from the poor to the rich. We have the very basic models that you can, if you're in Brazil, buy at a very cheap price, to luxurious models with Swarovski crystals that sell for 200 euros. And in Ibiza, we sell a lot of them when those Russian yachts come in, or, you know, big business for us in that market. But it goes from all the way. And we launched one product, a collaboration with Valentino, that actually, it was just the same rubber flip-flop with a Valentino logo and a couple of studs around here, and they were selling it for 400 to 600 euros in their stores. And when I told them, I said, guys, that is completely crazy. How can you sell a rubber flip-flop for 400? And they turned around to me and said, but that's the cheapest product we have in our stores. That's fine. So, and then we go from celebrities to just the regular Joe. So that's me, I guess. And one thing I think we're really proud of as Havaianas, it's to represent the Brazilians, a brand that can represent the Brazilian spirit. It's an incredible privilege to have, because when people think of that Brazilian spirit, which is that fun, the alegria, the color, the optimism, that kind of joyful living, there are not many brands out there that can say that's what we represent, that's what our product represents. And by that, what we have the good luck of being able to market a product that when you put it on your feet, you're bringing that feeling. Other brands, like my previous company, will give you that competitive touch, which is great if you are into competition. But here, this just brings a smile to your feet. And it's such a privilege to be able to bring that, even though the reality in Brazil, what we don't do is we don't market Brazil as a tourist office. Okay? We market the Brazilian spirit, which is a very different thing, because brands who have sometimes marketed the country. So if you remember a beer called Foster's, for example, that was really Australia. Once the countries come and go out of fashion. Okay, so Brazil might be in today as a country tourist destination, but all you need is political instability, economic instability, and next thing you know, they're really bad. But if you market the spirit of the country, that's what's important, and that's what we do in Havaianas. So, to keep moving, as I said, 10 pairs per second, if you do your calculations, more or less 230 million pairs sold, and of those, 30 million are sold outside of Brazil. Which brings me to the point that, at one point, Havaianas, in about 2006, the board of directors, okay, took the decision that it was time to create an international strategy. I guess when you're selling about 190 million pairs at the time to a population of about 190 million people, you have two choices. You either stop the family planning and hope the population doubles in the next couple of years, or you look for other opportunities outside your market. That's the decision they took. So in 2007, they opened an office in New York, and in 2008, they decided to open an office in Madrid. That was going to be the European office. Another story of why Madrid, but you can ask me that later. And that's where I come in. Okay? And that's I got headhunted out of my previous company, and I come into the European office. So, that wasn't the first time we were distributing Havaianas, and I think this is important to give credit to some other people before us, meaning Alpargatas came in. So in about 1998, when Havaianas were starting to take off, Europeans were going and traveling to Brazil and bringing back these Havaianas. And at the time, students like you, probably maybe even younger than you, who were living in Europe, most of them Brazilians, got the idea of what if we imported Havaianas in Europe. So some of them calling Alpargatas in Sao Paulo, pretending to be some serious professional distributor of the brand, convinced the person on the other side of the phone that really didn't know much at the time that they were wanted to be a distributor of the brand. They got the distribution, they started bringing in containers, and they started selling Havaianas in France. We had a distributor in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, in London, etc., etc. And they did a great job because they brought this product in and they started placing it in really high-level boutiques. So they positioned it as a fashion trend. A lot of the people that were wearing were these, like, you know, sneaker freakers type of people, like those really cool, you know, and hyper cool, because wearing a flip-flops in town back in the 90s, I mean, that wasn't cool. So you had to be cool to wear it. So everyone wanted to be cool. And thanks to those people, they grew the brand up to a certain limit. And that's when we came up with the international strategy of expanding the brand in a bigger way. So we opened our office in 2008. I got hired basically I quit my job on a Friday. On a Sunday, I was on a flight to Brazil, and I spent 2 weeks there trying to understand who was Alpargatas and the brand. And I flew back over here, and I landed here in Madrid, and there was nothing. But when I say nothing, there was nothing. My first office, I don't know if you guys know Madrid very well, but is on Goya, there's a hotel called the Vinci Soma. That's where I was hanging out, and they had Wi-Fi in the room, and that's from where I was working. I bought myself a mobile phone, I bought myself a laptop, and I used my Yahoo address. And that's how it started. And when I called Brazil, and I asked them what I do, the answer was, what you think is best. I knew I was getting into that, and that's why I left my previous company, because I wanted that entrepreneurial spirit. But it was really that way, because there wasn't much knowledge of how to take over a business at the time. So the first thing I did is I started looking for some good people to hire. I needed help. And so I started putting a team together. And I went to explain to the existing distributors that we had to find a deal out. So we signed them a nice hefty check. These guys were, you know, they had done a great job, and they left, I am assuming, very happily. And that's how we started. And then we opened offices in Spain, Portugal, France, UK, and Italy. And then we continued working with the existing distributors that we had in the other countries, like United Arab Emirates or Greece or places like that, Scandinavia. The first thing, and then by taking over, what we invested in heavily was obviously the brand. We spent a lot of marketing at the beginning. One thing Brazil had a very clear idea, and they did a very good job about it, was that they were going to over-invest in an international market. They didn't come with tight pockets. They came in with big marketing budgets, because if we were going to take over from the distributor, we had to do it better. We had to invest in the brand, we had to invest in the operations and in the structure. So we opened a warehouse in Tarragona at the time that would distribute in the whole of Europe. We started working with a distribution strategy, so working with clients from department stores. We started working on product development. Again, remember, the positioning in Brazil is a very different positioning than in Europe. We needed products that were more fashion-oriented, and if you're in the world of fashion, fashion changes very quickly. So I used to give this example to Brazil at the very beginning. I said, if you ask a Brazilian young lady, what does she want? She will, in Havaianas, she will probably answer you, do you remember that color you used to do a couple of years ago? I love that color. Okay. If you ask a French, imagine a Parisian young lady, what do you want? straight away said, why don't you do a different shape or something with a sandal? Maybe you can play with the materials straight away. They're always wanting something new. So this was the difference between the needs of a country that was selling 200 million pairs and the need of a region that was just starting. Okay? And this was not easy at the beginning, but because it was so important for Brazil to make the international business work, they were prepared to invest their limited SKUs, which are product style colors, on the international business, even though our sales were much lower than the products they were developing for their country. And then retail expansion. So today, what is Alpargatas EMEA? We have 6 offices. Düsseldorf, we're just taking over Germany, Austria, and the Benelux in 2015. So we're starting to expand our direct operations in Europe. After 5 years of consolidating the 5 big markets, we're starting into other countries. We now have 8,000 points of sales across Europe. So from one warehouse, we deliver to 8,000 different points of sales. All of this obviously happens in a very short time, because in Europe, as you know, summer is short, and Havaianas, you don't really wear them outside when it's freezing. And then what we've done is, since 2010, we've basically grown the business very healthy. If you go back in hindsight, and I think, God, I got hired out of a company that was doing really well back in 2008 in Spain, just when that crisis hit us, big time, right? And just at that time, we were still able to grow on average between 20 and 25% across all European countries, obviously starting from a small base. But we were able to overcome pretty much a double-dip crisis in those years. And a lot of people say, how did you guys do it? And the reality is, I'm not a psychologist, but one of the things that you've got to think is Havaianas is a fashion product. It's a brand that people are proud of in Europe, and it's accessible. And at the end of the day, when times are tough in recessions, and if you probably know the story of the 1930s and the lipstick, where that people used to sell because it made people feel positive, in a way Havaianas had the same effect. When you're down and you have one product on you that you can afford that gives you a positive feeling, unconsciously you turn towards those types of products. So again, this is not a scientific proof, but it helped us. We didn't see any issues with the sellout of our products. What I had to fight about was Europe is not one country, okay? And they were often pushing me as if Europe was one country, and I said no. When I would tell them we need headcounts, why? And I said, well, I need 5 sales managers. I need 1 in Portugal, 1 in France, because the little independent store on the Adriatic coast of Italy, it's not the same guy as the guy in Malaga. How am I going to serve? I need 1 sales manager. No, 5 sales managers. 5 sales manager, yes. And 5 customer service. 5 customer service. 5 different languages. And my e-commerce site, 14 languages. No, but the US, no, but 1 language. So that wasn't easy at the beginning. And then also, let me just go through. So commodity, the brand positioning. Again, over there, it's sold across every channel. Here we have to be protective. We're a fashion item. I tell them, I said, because I remember the CEO of Alpargatas, forget my boss, the CEO of Alpargatas came here the first year. And when I gave him my distribution plan, he couldn't understand. Why don't we sell in Carrefour? I was like, wow. Well, let me explain to you, because you see, if you sell in Galeries Lafayette and you sell in Carrefour, it's like Prada. If you saw Prada in Carrefour, I'm not sure you would be prepared to pay 600 euros or 1,000 euros for a handbag. So people are not going to be prepared to pay 25 euros per a pair of flip-flops if I'm going to sell it in the Repsol petrol station, right? And I'm not sure the buyer in Galeries Lafayette is going to want it either. And so that wasn't, you guys probably look at me and say, believe me, it was a serious discussion. The guy wasn't joking, because he couldn't understand why we just don't open the distribution. And I said, you can, but you lose your positioning. And then you're not selling at 24 euros, you have to sell it at 5 euros like a Chinese product. But at that point, then all your marketing money is a waste of money and your margins are gone. Okay, so that was important. Product development, like I just mentioned, not easy to try to convince an organization that when they just produce 1 new color, they probably sell 10 million pairs. 10 million pairs is what I sell today 6 years later in the whole region. Okay, so at one point that was also, but on this point I think they were very understandable on this. And then I just talked about the distribution strategy. Again, you can't open the brand to everyone. And then the other part is, apart from the challenges, one was the Brazilian part, okay, so that commodity versus fashion. And the other one was the seasonal part, okay, something that Brazil doesn't really face. It's summer all year long over there, okay, apart from the south, but if you go in the north. In our case, we have a huge issue of seasonality, okay? So if you take the brand awareness, we spend all this money in marketing during 4 months, and then we disappear for 8 months. If I ask you in the middle of summer, name me 5 snowboard-only brands. In the middle of summer, lying on your beach in Marbella, you have 5 snowboard brands. In the middle of winter, you probably already named 3 because you've just been going through magazines and you have whatever the killer, whatever brand of snow. That's what happens to us. We spend all this money and we disappear. And so why, as our brand awareness, probably some of you might have said it's 53%. Well, we come and go. Commercial relationships. I go to El Corte Inglés in Castellana. They give me a great space at the entrance. Wow, fantastic. I sell 10,000 pairs. And then, end of September, I'm gone. In the meantime, this other great brand comes along, takes the space. Next summer I come along, it's gone. I'm on the 7th floor next to the toilets. And my historical data is 10,000 pairs, and I have to grow 20%. Right? That's an issue. Cash flow. So I make a lot of money, and then suddenly you just see your bank account going down, 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 because all you do is you have costs. No revenues, just costs. Okay. And then also the retailers. We were going through the economic crisis. This was our biggest problem in the economic crisis, not selling our products, cashing in. Why? Because a retailer that's got the winter collection that has to be delivered in September is paying Quicksilver their summer collection in August. Otherwise, they won't deliver them the winter collection. Havaianas, why pay them in September? The next delivery is in April the following year. So the little cash I have, I'm going to pay the product that I need in September. And so our payment terms were not 60 days or 90 days, but 180 and okay, so that's another age. Retail expansion. We want to open stores because now there's big mono brands. Everyone's opening their own stores. Great idea. Okay. What do you sell today? Go to our Havaianas store in Calle Arenal and ask the guy, how many people came in today? So we want to say, you know, and the worst thing is you lose your employees. Because try working in a store where nobody walks in and you have to hang there for 8 hours. People quit. I said, but it's great because in the summer you complain that too many people, and he said, no, I prefer the summer. So it's also a point. And then the organization. What do you do with your salespeople once they finish selling in one season? Okay. So all of these, like I said, is yes, you have the Brazilian challenge because we're completely different position of brand, but I think the biggest challenge for us was the internalization of the brand for the Brazilian organization was the underestimating the seasonal impact. So moving on. I had to put some pictures in there just in case there were some marketing people in the room. So solutions. How do you cross that? I think the first point is the business education. That discussion I had with the CEO of the company that first year was so important. But it wasn't important, I had to make sure that he didn't go back to Brazil until he clearly understood what I was saying. Otherwise, then it becomes an email telling you to sell in Carrefour. So that educational piece is so important both ways. It was important for me to understand the realities of Brazil and the volumes they do over there and be respectful for that. And it was important for them to understand this positioning here. And that was lots of dialogue. And a lot of dialogue is face-to-face. Because sometimes, because of the cultural difference, languages, I'm not Brazilian. My Portuguese now is okay, but at the time was 0. And English is not a language spoken in Alpargatas. Okay, so you've got to take that in consideration. And this is a lot of, when I say education, is teaching each other about the business and the market. And then in terms of the solution for the branding is obviously investing quite a lot of money in marketing, because at the fashion company we have to invest a lot in marketing, and the distribution policy. The distribution policy here as well is giving certain products to different accounts. Okay? So if you go to the fashion industry, you give them certain products. If you go to what I would call like a Decathlon, you don't give Decathlon the same products that you would give a Galeries Lafayette or a Harrods. Okay? You've got to give different products for the different types of consumer mindsets that go shopping. Something Brazil doesn't do. It's like Coca-Cola, right? It can be a different price, but it's the same product. Okay, so this would, and the funny, interesting enough, they're now starting to apply a little bit of this product, what we call product assortments in Brazil. So if you go to like a store like Daslu, which is this, I don't know, anyway, it's like a big, and then they go to the petrol stations, there's now different types of products for different, which is also important, and they're growing their business a little more. The season, so here's kind of what we have, that famous pyramid where we have products for the fashion, top fashion stores, lifestyle stores like the Gina stores, surf stores, and the sports style type of stores. And then the hypermarket and shoe chains, that's a big cross. We don't do that. Okay. Here's a Valentino product, by the way, if you want 400 euros. And so here, and then seasonality, extended product usage. So one of the first things we did is how can we extend the product? So rain boots. Okay. Do we sell a lot of these? No. But thanks to rain boots, we sell more flip-flops in winter. Because if I put a rain boot window in the store, people look and walk in. If I put a flip-flop window in the store in December, people look and keep walking, right? So they walk in. Do they buy a pair of rain boots? Probably not. They're not buying another pair of flip-flops. So it's also important. Because Brazil at one point challenged me on my numbers. Rain boots, how many pairs are you doing? I was like, oh God. Not much. Oh, well, why should we continue? For that reason, seasonality. We need to keep going. How else can you work on seasonality? Extended product usage. So one of the, well, let me get back. Seasonal initiatives, so extended product usage. So people go back to the swimming pool, right? So gyms. After summer, everyone's back to the gym. So take a shower with a pair of Havaianas. We can. Much sexier than those slides that people take, right? So you market that. And now, thanks to the Easy Jets and the Ryanairs, now people go to tropical destinations in December. So you've got the cruise collection. So you try to market that as well. So you try to extend it as much as you can. And then you come up with creative retail concepts. So we have 109 points of sales in Europe, Havaianas points of sales. Okay. Only 14 of those stay open all year. The other ones open and close. So you've got to work on pop-up concepts, your furniture, taking it down, putting it up, it's got to be cheap. So you start getting really creative and you start inventing things that you didn't know you could invent. But that's another one of working on the seasonality. And the future. Just one more slide and then I'll let you ask some questions. The future. So what are we going to do? Of course, like all good business people, right? The big numbers. Double the business by 2020. But this is possible. 50% brand awareness, and we know we're in a way kind of a love. People who know us love us, and people who love us buy us. So if only 50% of the people or 60% know us, if I can increase that to 80%, which is marketing, every person that I can continue to, if they know us, the conversion rates of Havaianas are very high, which is great. Okay, so that's a number that's attainable. And that's what I'm talking about by increasing the brand awareness. Digital becoming a very big part, as you guys know. I was wondering, what happened to the blackboards, by the way? Where, are those disappeared? Or where's the chalk and the... You know? Okay, so I leave that up to other people in my team to figure out the digital part. But, and then the distribution, be where the consumers shop. So one of the big debates that's going on in the industry, not just Havaianas, but in any on the footwear lifestyle industry, is what do you do with the big monsters of Amazon and the Zalandos of this world? Do you go with them? At what expense? Because it's so big, it's a bit like being an agriculture trying to sell your potatoes to Carrefour. You're going to squeeze you to death. Do you go in there? Because once you go in, then you can't get out. And that's a big debate that's going on. I believe you go. Because you don't think of them, you think of these people. That's where they're shopping, you've got to be where they are. Okay? So that's an important discussion that we're having at the moment. And then diversify, future objective, diversify, I talked about product segmentation. So one of the things my previous company did really well is you make people buy more than one pair, especially when you have a short season. So today, Havaianas, people think, oh, you buy a pair of Havaianas to go to the beach. You say, yes, you have one for the beach. But I have another one with some Swarovski crystals that you can wear after the when you go shopping, you know, on the side of the street, right? And then I have another pair for you to go to the gym to take your shower. So it's a bit more sporty, and it's got, you know, it looks a little more there. So right there, you need to buy 3 pairs, right? So same consumer base, I triple my business. That's another way of looking on how to grow your business. And then the supply chain as well. Summers are short. And in some countries, summer can be just 2 weekends. I don't know if any of you are going to live in London very soon, but summer can be just 2 weekends. And if on that weekend you don't have your product at the point of sales, that's it. You wait till next year. So one of the things I say to my operations director is, we are maybe classified as footwear, but when it comes to logistics, sink, ice cream, how come I can go to any bar, anywhere in the summer, whether I'm in the mountains in the Alps or on the seaside, and I open that ice cream sink and there's always magnums inside? How do they do it? How do they fulfill that in every single point of sales? That's what we need to do. Not look at what footwear companies like Vans and Converse does, but look at the ice cream business. Because we are in the same industry. Right? Okay? And then we will be launching, they launched in Brazil. Okay, there's been a long project, 4 years in the work, and it's in a way because of the international business. But we're going to be launching apparel. Okay, so swimwear and beachwear, which is great. But then, once it was done, I kind of looked at it and said, but that doesn't resolve my seasonality issue. So we're back to square one. Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.